question is to Mr. Shourie. There are 2 or 3 things that go on which perhaps increase the corruption level. I'd like your comments. One is the amount of money officially allowed to be spent for an MLA candidate or an MP candidate by the laws today is far too low. And therefore, even if somebody wants to be honest, they have to have unaccounted money to spend on top of what they can spend officially. Second, public officials and politicians are not allowed to be sued in our country without permission from very high levels. And thirdly, would public government financing of elections help, in your view, in reducing the corruption levels in the country?
Sir,
Please.
so I'll start with the last question. So it's related to the second point that you made about unrealistic limits. You see, in India, the law enforcement is so poor that if you give state funding to these people, they will take the state funds and also use their own funds. आप देखिए जापान से लेसन सीखने वाला है इस समय. Just see, you could. I talked to a friend in Tokyo. He was on the 37th floor. His building was swaying. He said it was really swaying. And the BBC chap said he saw 2 buildings almost touch each other, but not one building collapsed, not one glass broke, because standards were enforced. They had been devised by professionals, they were enforced. And the contractors were honest enough that when they made it, they abided by those standards. यहाँ देखिए अहमदाबाद में, सूरत में जब earthquake आया है, everybody said, oh, poor buildings, poor construction, builders are going to be caught, prosecuted. It's a good point for the media also to follow up, उनका क्या हुआ. So unless standards are enforced, this utopian ideas about state funding won't do. I will give you another idea. That is, yes, they will require black money in cash. Now, great businessmen like yourselves should pioneer general shareholders body जो होती है आपकी meeting, उसमें resolution pass होनी चाहिए. For instance, that we will give. We know that our company will have to make donations to political parties. But if it gives money to a political party which is fielding a criminal as a candidate, then our whole board will be removed. So when these fellows come to you, you say, "Ki Baba, you remove these 5 candidates because they have the criminal antecedents, otherwise you see my hands are tied." This is the way to prevent criminalization of politics, rather than passing a law. Similarly, the same thing goes for electoral financing in this way. On your last point, I completely agree with you that yes, this idea of that you cannot prosecute a senior civil servant without a complex permission procedure, that really needs to be examined, but it should be examined by a group of persons like F.S. Nariman, Soli Sorabji and others, because you don't want it also to become that if Rajiv does not give me a clearance, then I just take him to court and then he can't become the CVC.
My question is for Rajiv Chandrasekhar. You have raised a lot of points in this 2G scam, and you have personally kind of explained what needs to be done. What is it, in your opinion, that actually needs to be done to completely clean the system so that there is no repeat? And do you realistically believe that in a country like ours, we can ever achieve that?
No, to answer your last part, yes, of course I believe it. I'm very confident that if there is a will to do it, we can, because the solutions are not very difficult. In terms of what should happen, as you know, this PIL, the hearing has just got over from the Supreme Court. And in my opinion, the best way to clean up this, and the catalyst in a way, is if the Supreme Court finds that the process has been illegal and there has been a violation of law by the government and government authorities. and consequently these licenses are also found to be illegal. Like the judge famously said 4 days ago, if the roots are bad, the fruits are bad. And that phrase was then used yesterday to describe the vote of confidence as well. The roots are bad, the fruits are bad. So I think, to go to what Mr. Shourie said, a few people must lose their licenses, they must lose their ill-gotten wealth. Whoever has been part of the criminal conspiracy, a few must go to jail. There is no other option. I mean, I think trying to persuade people to do the right thing is not necessarily a sustainable model. We have to send a signal that there is a way to do things in this country. You violate that, and you pay the consequences. And if we're not able to demonstrate that as a democracy and as a country, we will just go, play this around again and again and again.
Mr. Shourie would like to add something.
So just, by the time the government had changed in 2004, we were working on a system which is very simple and which would have prevented such things from happening. That was, firstly, unify the licenses. Because there were at that time about 28 different types of licenses. And if you gave one type of license to somebody, COAI will come in. If you give something to COAI, the other CDMA people will come in. So the idea was unify the licenses so that anyone can provide, any service provider can provide any service through any technology anywhere in the country to any consumer. That was one. Secondly, have a low entry fee, almost an automatic authorization to anybody who wants to come in, and de-link. At that time, licensing and spectrum used to be one. So we had started working that you de-link licensing from spectrum and auction the spectrum. This was the whole idea for unified licensing. Now, supposing this had been done, we were working on this. TRAI was going to submit a report in 6 months on this matter. There was to be an only intermediate period for the license regime. It would have meant that discretionary powers would have gone down. There would have been auction, which people like Rajiv have been advocating now. And this is what was killed. And I'm sorry it was killed by a very articulate and good man in Dayanidhi Maran. Because, because one of the consequences of that whole unification would have been that television could also be provided by telecom operators and everybody. But so it does not require rocket science to devise systems of this kind. And whether it will be done or not really depends on people like you and us who are in this room. The people who are deciding these things don't have legitimacy. You have that legitimacy today. You should use it for structural change. And of course, as Rajiv says, that in this particular case, put 6 people in jail, do X, Y, and Z, and therefore you make a beginning.
My name is Dr. Sandeep Vora. I'm a psychiatrist and psychotherapist at Apollo Hospital. I see regularly lots of very good people, bureaucrats, who come to me with depression just because they don't want to become corrupt. And if they want to change the system, they can't. So my question to the panel is it realistic for us to expect that one day India will become corruption-free, or are we being over-optimistic? Thank you.
Mr. Singh?
You said India will become, what, corruption-free? No, I don't believe, frankly, that, no, I'm giving you an honest answer. I don't believe India will be, and for that matter, I don't believe any country in the world, you can say 100% corruption-free, is the degree of freedom. Now, in India, what is happening just now is, in my view, let's see the positive side. Because of RTI and because of the vigilant media, you are seeing scams. But please take it from me, the much greater scams have been happening ever since 1970 or 80s onward. It has not dramatically increased now. The question is, the good side of the story now is, this is coming to the surface for public debate. And it is at this time, one has to recognize that our pace of reforms in the country has not kept pace with the entrepreneurial development sort of unleashed after 1991 reforms. That the entrepreneurial growth is faster than the reform. So the only answer in my view is the reform pace must increase substantially. to get the government out of this business, and only, as I said, the lesser the discretionary power with the policy maker, the lesser will be the corruption. But I can't believe, I don't see that you will have a corruption-free India. I mean, not in my lifetime at least.
Rajiv, want to add something?
No, you know, I think I think you're setting the wrong goals. I think instead of saying there should be a corruption-free India and something completely unachievable, the goals that we should set for ourselves are that India will be a land of rules and laws. India will be a country that will have institutions, credible institutions that will ensure that those laws are enforced. And if people are tempted to break the law, and there will always be people who are tempted to do this, those people will be identified, detected, and put where they belong. And I think that is more of a realistic, practical set of goals to aspire to. In terms of looking for these utopian things like that sounds more like Alice in Wonderland.
This question is for Mr. Singh. Mr. Singh, many years back when I visited your office, there was a placard which I saw on your table which said, "Yahan 19-20 nahi chalega," which I would like to believe reflects your commitment to quality and transparency. While it is well known that the reality sector depends largely on the parallel economy, I would like to ask you as to how do you handle this paradox of demonstrating a commitment to quality and transparency in an industry which feeds off the black economy in a big way. Is it then true that the real estate industry and the parallel economy, the black money economy, are two sides of the same coin?
First, I think perhaps you may have gone to wrong. My office placard says, "Thank you for not smoking." So it is not that. But having said that, let me answer your second question. Yes, in fact, real estate industry is the least reformed industry. And please understand, wherever reforms have not taken place, the corruption, parallel economy exists. The question is, it is incorrect to say that it exists everywhere. So if you have been to our office and something, and I took the decision maybe 15, 20 years back for one reason only. I said, listen, we have made good money. I don't want to go behind the bars and face things. I want to live well. So to hell with anything, let's do exactly compliance with laws. DLF has done, we do it. Difficult. It's not easy. And I would say only because this industry is plagued for archaic laws, regulations. Everything is archaic. No reforms have taken place ever since independence, frankly. So I hope that with the now the change, and today I was it was nice to see the Prime Minister's statement. They reduced the stamp duty. Now these are great statements. So I think things are happening, but it is not happening at the pace which I would like to feel at this stage.